You ever look at a game's score and think, no way it's that bad? Yeah, same here. Some of the best RPGs out there got absolutely wrecked by critics, and for what? Frame drops? Budget issues? A weird combat system? Today, we're diving into 10 underrated RPGs that got dragged through the mud but are way better than you remember. Trust me, by the end of this video, you'll be asking, how did they get it so wrong? Before we start the video, a quick question. Has this ever happened to you? You love the game, the story's great, the world is awesome, but then the grind kicks in. Hours and hours just to level up, or that one boss you just can't beat. And eventually, you give up, even though deep down you really want to see what comes next. So yeah, Xmod is the solution if you're tired of wasting hours just to enjoy your game. It's a platform that supports over 5,000 single-player games, and with it, you can apply mods and cheats with just one click. Want to skip the grind? Get unlimited gold? Health, mana, stamina, weapons, whatever it is, Xmod probably has it. And the best part? You don't need to know anything about modding. Just launch the game, click the mod you want, and that's it. Instant power-up. Everything's in one place. Trainers, cheats, cosmetic mods, visual upgrades, all neatly organized by game and just one click away. You don't have to worry about viruses or getting banned either. It's 100% safe to use with your Steam account and other platforms, as long as you stick to single-player games. And if anything goes wrong, there's live support ready to help you out. And it's even easier to install it. Click the link in the description or in the pinned comment and download Xmod for free. Then launch your game and activate the mod you want. And boom, in 2 clicks, you're playing the way you want to play. Seriously, just by downloading it through my link, you're already helping the channel a lot, even if you're just testing it out. So give it a shot, it's free, and you'll be surprised by how many games, cool features, and awesome mods it already supports. Try it out and let me know in the comments how it went.
You murderous savage.
First up is Drakengard 3, a game that feels like it was stitched together with duct tape and pure ambition. Developed by Yoko Taro and released exclusively for the PlayStation 3 in 2013, this chaotic masterpiece tried to do way more than its budget allowed. The result? A game that crashes through technical issues but still manages to leave a mark with its brutal storytelling and bizarre creativity. At launch, Drakengard 3 got roasted for its terrible performance. We're talking frame rates that dipped below 20 FPS like it was some kind of challenge. The loading times dragged, the visuals looked half-baked, and the overall polish just wasn't there. But behind all that mess was a deeply layered story full of twisted characters, weird humor, and some of the most unforgettable moments in the entire action RPG genre. The studio Yoko Taro worked with wasn't used to developing big action games. Combine that with a tight budget and a rushed production cycle, and it's honestly impressive that this game works at all. But what's wild is that, despite all the jank, it still delivers a powerful experience. The writing is sharp, the themes are dark, and the soundtrack is straight up beautiful. One of the coolest things about Drakengard 3 is how it messes with structure and player expectations. Each playthrough unlocks new story branches, revealing deeper layers of the narrative and completely changing the context of earlier events. By the time you reach the final route, known by fans as the Intoner finale, you're thrown into one of the most bizarre and unforgettable boss fights ever made, backed by a haunting soundtrack that literally syncs with your button presses. It's weird, frustrating, brilliant, and pure Yoko Taro. If this game ever gets a remake or even a remaster with modern hardware behind it, people will finally see just how much potential it always had. Let's be real, Lightning Returns got way more hate than it deserved. By the time it came out, a lot of people had already made up their minds because of how split the fanbase was over Final Fantasy XIII and XIII-2. But this third entry is actually one of the most unique games in the entire franchise. It ditched the old formula and gave us something bold. A time-based structure where every decision mattered. You've got a limited number of in-game days to save souls, complete quests, and prep for the end of the world. That pressure adds intensity to every moment, kind of like what Majora's Mask did back on the Nintendo 64. What makes Lightning Returns stand out even more is the combat. Instead of the usual party system, you control Lightning alone, customizing her loadouts, abilities, and outfits. The whole system is fast, stylish, and super flexible. Easily the most fun gameplay-wise in the trilogy. Something that doesn't get enough credit is how Lightning Returns lets you approach missions however you want. The game gives you the freedom to explore, fail, retry, and adapt your strategy. There are hidden quests that only show up at certain times, areas that completely change depending on the day, and choices that can block or open entire storylines. That kind of freedom is rare in a Final Fantasy game, and it adds a ton of replay value for anyone who's into digging deeper. Now, yeah, the game's performance wasn't great. On consoles like the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360, the frame rate dipped a lot. Some textures looked rough, and even the PC port didn't clean things up much. But the core experience is solid, creative, and underrated. A lot of people let their frustration with the earlier games bleed into how they judge this one. And that's a shame because Lightning Returns had some great ideas and wrapped up the saga in a way that felt fitting, even if the story wasn't the strongest. But that final cutscene is on another level. Visually stunning, emotionally powerful, and the perfect send-off for Lightning's journey. It's not a perfect game, but that 66 score is way too harsh.
How dare you obstruct our glorious battle!
You're a disgrace to Highland!
Tales of Zestiria dropped with a lot of hype. It was supposed to be the big celebration of 20 years of the franchise. Bandai Namco promised a next-level experience. More ambitious, more polished, more epic. And while the game did deliver some of that, it also ended up disappointing a lot of longtime fans. The expectations were sky high, and unfortunately the final product didn't live up to everything the trailers and marketing had teased. Still, that doesn't mean the game is bad, not even close. It has a solid story, a likable cast, and one of the most fluid combat systems the series had seen up to that point. The shift to a more seamless battle transition was a big leap forward compared to previous entries. On top of that, Zestiria introduced a unique fusion mechanic called Aromatization, where your main character could literally merge with a Seraph to become a stronger, hybrid warrior mid-battle. It wasn't just a flashy transformation, it changed your entire moveset, boosted your power, and gave you access to elemental attacks you couldn't use otherwise. Mastering this system was key to handling tougher bosses, and it brought a whole new layer of strategy that made combat way more dynamic than it looked at first glance. Another cool detail that often gets overlooked is how the game handled equipment fusion. You could mix and match gear to create new passive abilities, stacking bonuses and creating builds that actually made a difference in battle. It gave players a lot of freedom to tweak their party and experiment with different strategies, especially in tougher fights. Yes, the world design felt a bit too empty. Yes, some story beats dragged longer than they should. But saying the game is trash? That's just unfair. It had depth, it had charm, and it tried new things even if they didn't all stick the landing. It also marked a turning point for the franchise, laying the groundwork for improvements seen in future titles like Tales of Berseria. These days, you can grab it for cheap. And if you go in without the weight of those old expectations, you'll probably find a game that's way better than its reputation suggests.
Not yet! Ready? No escape! It's over! Sora, it's me! Ah! What?
Let's talk about one of the most misunderstood entries in the entire Kingdom Hearts series, Re-Chain of Memories. This game originally dropped on the Game Boy Advance, but later got a full 3D remake for the PlayStation 2. And while Japan got it bundled with Kingdom Hearts 2 Final Mix, the West had to buy it separately, which already gave it an uphill battle. Now here's the thing, Re-Chain of Memories is weird. It ditched the usual hack-and-slash gameplay for a unique card-based combat system. And yeah, that caught a lot of people off guard. Some fans hated it right away just because it was different. But beneath that unusual layer was a surprisingly deep battle system, one that actually made you think about every move instead of just mashing buttons. On top of that, the upgrade system added another layer of strategy. Instead of just leveling up for more health or strength, you had to decide whether to increase your card points, learn new abilities, or boost your HP. Card points let you build better decks, which meant stronger combos and smarter plays. But what really sets Rechain of Memories apart is how it bridges the gap between Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2 in terms of story. It's not just filler, it introduces Organization 13 for the first time and lays down key emotional beats that pay off later in the series. The remake brought new visuals, voiced cutscenes, and a smoother overall experience. It didn't just rehash the GBA version, it expanded on it. Still, critics didn't hold back. It scored in the high 60s, which honestly doesn't reflect the effort or the creativity packed into this remake. Sure, it's not the most beloved game in the franchise, but to act like it's some throwaway spin-off is just wrong.
I feel so bad. Go! That's Humboat.
When Strange of Paradise first showed up, it felt like a complete train wreck. A chaotic mess of screaming chaos every 5 seconds, clunky trailers, and a vibe that left a lot of people thinking it was some kind of meme. But behind all that noise was something way more interesting. Co-developed by Square Enix and Team Ninja, this game is actually a bold prequel of Final Fantasy I, thrown into a brutal, fast-paced Souls-like format. And while it might look unhinged at first glance, the further you get, the more it starts to click. The combat is insanely fun, mixing deep class systems with flashy, responsive mechanics that let you switch playstyles on the fly. The more you use a job, the more passive perks and active skills you unlock, and these carry over when you mix jobs into advanced or expert classes. It's like someone took all the classic jobs from Final Fantasy like Warrior, Mage, Thief, and threw them into a blender with Ninja Gaiden's aggression and Dark Souls intensity. It's not your typical Final Fantasy, and that's exactly what makes it stand out. The storytelling starts off rough, sure, but as the hours go by, it unfolds into something much smarter than you'd expect. What really blows your mind is how it ties everything back to Final Fantasy I in a way nobody saw coming. As you get closer to the end, all the chaotic pieces start falling into place, and suddenly, that weird tone and the over-the-top dialogue make perfect sense. It recontextualizes the entire lore of the original game, adding layers to characters and events that used to feel pretty basic. There's a reason people who actually finished it walked away surprised, even impressed. Strange of Paradise dropped on PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox One, Xbox Series, and PC. And while critics gave it a lukewarm 72, it honestly deserved better. When people talk about the Shin Megami Tensei series, they usually bring up heavy hitters like Persona or Nocturne. But buried under all that is a spin-off that deserves way more love. Soul Hackers. The original game came out back in the Sega Saturn and PlayStation days, and while it never got the spotlight it deserved at launch, the upgraded version on the Nintendo 3DS finally gave it a second chance. It mixed cyberpunk vibes, demons, and detective work into one of the coolest setups in the entire franchise. Then came Soul Hackers 2 in 2022. It didn't try to be a direct sequel, it just built on the concept with fresh characters and a modern style. But both games got hit with a wave of criticism, averaging a score around 74. And honestly, that feels off. Yeah, they've got their issues. Some of the dungeon designs can feel repetitive, and Soul Hackers 2 struggles a bit to stand out in a crowded genre. But when you look past that, there's a lot of heart here. The atmosphere is slick, the world building is solid, and the characters actually feel like they belong in that weird, digital-fused version of reality. The combat, especially in Soul Hackers 2, leans into that classic turn-based style, but adds some neat twists. The Sabbath mechanic rewards you for exploiting enemy weaknesses by stacking attacks for a huge group strike at the end of your turn. On top of that, the upgrade system gives you a bunch of ways to fine-tune your playstyle. You can enhance your comp, the cyber tool used to summon and manage demons, unlocking passive buffs, new features, and better support in battle. Characters also get unique skill trees, so you're not just grinding for levels, you're actually shaping how each one fights. These aren't games that will change the industry, but they're way better than people gave them credit for.
Ready to go time.
When Cyberpunk 2077 launched back in 2020, it was a train wreck. On PS4 and Xbox One, the game barely ran. Constant crashes, textures taking forever to load, and performance that dipped below what anyone would call playable. But here's the thing, none of that was the dev team's fault. It was corporate pushing impossible deadlines and selling a dream they couldn't deliver on time. The hate it got was totally justified at the time. Those old-gen versions were unplayable, and honestly, they never got fully fixed. But if you looked past the mess, something special was buried underneath. Cyberpunk 2077 had one of the most compelling narratives in recent RPG history. The characters were deep, the world building was top tier, and the atmosphere pulled you in hard. The bones of a great game were always there. It just needed time, and luckily, it got that. Once it landed on PS5, Xbox Series, and got proper patches on PC, everything changed. It's smoother, more immersive, and the story finally shines without being buried under bugs. And after the Phantom Liberty DLC, the game feels complete. It's wild to think that the same title that once sat at a 57 on Metacritic for PS4 now scores a solid 86 on current-gen systems. Cyberpunk 2077 was never a bad game. It was an unfinished one. And now that it finally got the polish it deserved, it's worth every minute. Back in 2010, Nier dropped without much fanfare. Visually, it looked like something out of the early PlayStation 2 era with low-budget vibes, stiff animations, and clunky combat. For most people, that was enough to walk away. But what got completely missed was the heart of the game. Underneath all the rough edges was a deeply emotional story, unforgettable characters, and a world that hit way harder than it had any right to. One of the most underrated things about Nier was its soundtrack. It wasn't just good, it was haunting. Every track felt like it was ripped straight from the soul of the game. Soft vocals in a made-up language, melancholy piano pieces, intense boss battle themes. It all blended into this surreal, emotional backdrop that stayed with you long after the credits rolled. But the problem wasn't just the presentation, it was how people played it. Nier wasn't a one-and-done kind of game. You had to finish it multiple times to unlock the full story, and each new run changed everything. Characters you thought you knew weren't who they seemed, bosses you killed without a second thought, suddenly, you understood their pain. But that twist only hit if you pushed through the entire experience, and most players didn't. Reviewers rushed through, missed the point, and slapped it with an average score that didn't reflect what the game really delivered. Another issue was how Square Enix handled the marketing. Yoko Taro, the mind behind Nier, barely got a chance to explain what made the game special. It was buried under the weight of misunderstanding and low expectations. Only years later, when the remaster Nier Replicant dropped in 2021, did people finally start to see what was there all along. Nier wasn't a game built for quick praise or flashy trailers. It was raw, weird, and unapologetically emotional. And even though it took over a decade to get the credit it deserved, those who stuck with it from the beginning knew this game was something else. Back when Bandai Namco dropped Tales of Xillia 2, expectations were through the roof. It was the direct sequel to one of the most beloved entries in the franchise, and yeah, people were ready to tear it apart the second it didn't hit the same highs. But here's the thing. While it doesn't quite outshine the original, calling it a bad game is just straight up wrong. Tales of Xillia 2 actually builds on the foundation of the first game in some really smart ways. It expands the world, brings back fan-favorite characters, and introduces a darker tone that adds a new layer to the story. The twist is that the main character, Ludger, doesn't even talk much. Instead, the game gives you dialogue choices that shape how things play out. That might have turned some players off, but it also made the experience more personal, like you were the one making the big calls. Sure, it's not perfect. Some people didn't vibe with the tone shift or the debt system you're forced into early on. But the combat's still buttery smooth, and the character arcs are surprisingly emotional. Tales of Xillia 2 got slapped with a 71 on Metacritic, which honestly feels way too low. It's better than a bunch of other sequels in the series that didn't even try to do anything new. If you're into JRPGs with strong character development and fast-paced battles, this one still hits.
Who are you? What is this all about?
When Vampire dropped back in 2018, most folks didn't know what to make of it. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't perfect, and yeah, the combat felt stiff. But buried under its flaws was one of the most atmospheric and emotionally gripping RPGs of that entire generation. Developed by Dotnod, the same team behind Life is Strange, Vampire traded teen drama for plague-ridden London streets and moral chaos. You play as Jonathan Reed, a doctor-turned-vampire who's torn between saving lives and feeding on them to grow stronger. It's a constant internal war, and the game lets you feel every bit of that weight. What made Vampire shine wasn't its clunky movement or the sometimes repetitive combat. It was the world-building, the writing, and the characters. Another thing that made Vampire stand out was how it handled its leveling system. Instead of just farming enemies or collecting loot, your real source of XP came from feeding on the people around you. But it wasn't simple. Every character in the game had their own name, backstory, relationships, and role in the community. You could investigate their lives, learn their secrets, even unlock more XP by uncovering hidden details about them. But once you chose to feed, they were gone for good. Shops might close, quest lines would vanish, and entire districts could fall into chaos if you drained too many key figures. Critics were quick to tear it apart over polish and performance, but they missed what really mattered. Vampire isn't about clean gameplay, it's about messy choices, about regret, and about navigating a city slowly dying while you struggle not to become a monster. Sure, it's not for everyone, but if story-driven games are your thing, Vampire is an underrated gem that deserves way more respect than the 70 it got slapped with. Before you go, don't forget to download Xmod using the link below. It takes less than a minute and helps the channel a lot to keep growing and bringing more videos like this. And while you're at it, drop a comment, leave a like, and hit that subscribe button. Thanks so much for watching. It really means the world.